There is a place in the world where the land does not shout, but whispers. It stretches outward in every direction like a soft green ocean, rolling beneath a sky so wide that it feels older than memory itself. This is the Mongolian steppe, a realm of wind, distant horizons, and stories that drift like morning mist across the grass. Here, history breathes quietly. It does not live inside stone walls or towering cities, but in earth, sky, and silence. And somewhere beneath this vast expanse lies a mystery that has endured for centuries, the lost tomb of Genghis Khan. A soft beginning, so let us begin gently, as though we were sitting beside a quiet campfire, the evening light fading into twilight and the world becoming still. The flames do not roar. They murmur softly like the ancient winds of the steppe. And as the fire glows, the story unfolds. The man who became a legend before he was legend, before he was feared or revered across continents. He was simply a child named Temujin. Born in the 12th century into a world of tribal rivalries and shifting alliances, Temujin did not enter life as a mighty conqueror. His family experienced hardship, exile, hunger. He was not raised in comfort nor surrounded by luxury. Instead, he learned early what it meant to struggle against the world and what it meant to endure. Years passed and endurance became strength. Strength became leadership, and leadership transformed into destiny. Temujin united the fractious tribes of the steppe into a single nation. In time, he would become known as Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. Under his guidance, the Mongol Empire would grow into the largest contiguous land empire in history. From the plains of Eastern Asia to the edges of Europe, his influence reshaped civilizations, trade, culture, and warfare. And yet, for all his monumental impact on history, the place where he rests remains unknown, not merely lost, but intentionally concealed, hidden so thoroughly that even after 8 centuries, the secret has not yielded itself. A world of silence, the steppe is quiet at night. There are no neon signs, no rumble of distant highways, only the hush of the wind moving gently through the tall grass, the same wind that once carried the hoofbeats of riders across the horizon. Imagine standing there now. The sky is dark, yet filled with stars, more than you may ever have seen at once. They gather above like a drifting silver sea. The constellations feel ancient, as though they have watched over every chapter of humanity's story. Somewhere beneath this tranquil sky, the earth keeps its promise, a promise of secrecy. For according to legend, when Genghis Khan died in 1227, great care was taken to ensure that his tomb would remain forever hidden. Not simply forgotten, but protected from discovery. The final journey, the accounts differ, as ancient stories often do. Some chronicles say he died from injuries sustained during a military campaign in western Xia. Others whisper that he fell ill. The truth, like much of his life, is wrapped in layers of uncertainty and time. But all versions share one element in common. His burial was meant to be unseen. It is said that his body was carried back toward Mongolia under the watch of loyal companions. The route was hidden. Travelers who encountered the funeral party were, according to grim reports, silenced forever so that no word of the path might escape. When the burial place was finally reached, legend claims that horses were driven in great numbers over the ground, trampling the earth again and again, erasing any trace that the soil had ever been disturbed. Some versions go even further, suggesting that a river was diverted to flow across the burial site, hiding it beneath living waters. Whether these stories are literal, symbolic, or simply echoes shaped by time, one truth remains. The resting place of Genghis Khan has never been found. A culture of modesty to understand the secrecy, one must also understand the beliefs of the people who honored him. The Mongols did not glorify death with towering monuments of marble or gold. Their world was open sky, moving herds, and the eternal presence of the land itself. They valued simplicity. The steppe was sacred, and so was humility before it. For them, the greatest leader did not need a monument that pierced the horizon. His monument was the empire he created, the people he united, the stories passed down through the generations. And so the land itself became the guardian of his memory. No grand pyramid, no stone mausoleum, only grass, wind, and silence. A mystery through the ages centuries have drifted past like clouds in a calm sky. Empires have risen. Empires have faded. Worlds have changed. Yet the mystery remains. Historians, archaeologists, explorers all have wondered. Some have searched valleys, hillsides, river plains, and mountain slopes. There are those who believe he rests near the sacred mountain of Burkhan Khaldun, a place deeply tied to his early life and spiritual reverence. Others suggest remote plains, hidden glades, or unmarked ravines across Mongolia's sweeping landscape. Still, nothing certain has ever been found. Not a confirmed grave, not a confirmed shrine, only possibilities gently drifting like echoes. An atmosphere of wonder. This is not a tale of fear, nor of darkness. It is a tale of stillness, the kind that makes you pause and listen. Imagine again that vast landscape. The earth rolls softly toward the horizon. Wild horses graze in the distance. A shepherd's song drifts faintly on the wind. The clouds move slowly above, like ancient caravans traveling across the heavens. Somewhere beneath this world of gentle movement, time keeps a secret, undisturbed, unseen, unspoken. And perhaps that is part of the meaning. Between legend and history, many cultures preserve mysteries around their greatest figures. In Egypt, kings were buried in pyramids meant to withstand eternity. In China, the first emperor rests within a tomb filled with silent terracotta guardians. But Genghis Khan's tomb is different. His legacy was not preserved by stone walls, but by silence. It is a silence that allows space for reflection. A silence that invites questions. Why must we always uncover every secret? Why must every mystery be solved? Or perhaps, some stories are meant to live quietly like embers in the night. A journey begins, and so, as we begin this long, peaceful journey together, we will walk slowly through history, through legend, through the quiet landscapes of memory. We will explore the world he shaped, the beliefs that guided him, the searchers who came long after, and the gentle mystery that still remains. There will be no rush, no sharp turns, only a calm unfolding like the steppe itself. And as our first chapter draws to a close, the fire beside us softens, the night grows deeper, the stars continue their silent watch. And so, as the echoes of the ancient world softened into the night, we pause, ready to continue when you are. The night is calm. Above the steppe, the sky unfolds like a vast scroll of stars, the same sky that watched over wandering herders, ancient caravans, and the riders of the Mongol Empire. The constellations shimmer gently, not as a spectacle, but as a quiet presence. They are steady, patient, eternal, and in this stillness the story continues. A gentle return to the past long before the world spoke his name in awe or fear, Temujin's life was tied to a single sacred place, Burkhan Khaldun, a mountain rising from the Mongol homeland, wrapped in legend and reverence. To the Mongols, Burkhan Khaldun was not simply a peak of stone and soil. It was a spiritual heart, a place where the earth seemed closer to the sky, where the breeze carried prayers like drifting feathers, where the past and present felt quietly intertwined. Temujin himself once sought refuge here. In his youth, when life was uncertain and enemies pursued, this mountain sheltered him. Hidden valleys, forest paths, cool streams slipping through rocks polished by centuries of flowing water. He prayed there, he offered thanks, and he vowed never to forget the sanctuary the land had granted him. From that time onward, Burkhan Khaldun became sacred not only to him, but to those who followed him. He would rise each dawn to face the mountain, lifting his hat and bowing in respect, a gesture of deep humility toward the spirits of earth and sky. And so the story of the man and the mountain became intertwined, like wind and grass. A land of spiritual quiet. To understand Mongolia in those days is to imagine a world where nature and belief were woven together without edges. The land was not a backdrop. It was alive with meaning. The great open steppe, the mountains rising in solemn grace, the rivers tracing silver paths through the valleys, all held spirit, all deserved reverence. The Mongols honored the eternal blue sky, a concept both symbolic and sacred. The sky was guardian, witness, and divine presence. Beneath it, the land offered life. There were no towering temples of marble or gold, because the world itself was their temple. The soft crunch of hooves on grass could be prayer. The rising wind before a summer storm could be blessing or warning. In such a world, burial was not simply laying a body to rest. It was returning to the land, becoming part of the eternal cycle of earth and sky. And so, it is perhaps not surprising that legend places the tomb of Genghis Khan somewhere in this sacred geography, not in triumph, but in quiet unity with nature. The hidden valley, there are whispers, never confirmed, of a valley near Burkhan Khaldun. A place where the grass grows tall and pale in the summer sun, and the snow rests gently in winter. No stone markers, no carved inscriptions, only the endless rhythm of the seasons. Some historians suggest that he wished to be buried there without monument or inscription so that his spirit might remain forever within the homeland he loved. Imagine such a valley. The wind sighs softly through the grass. A brook murmurs over stones, worn smooth like river pearls. A hawk circles slowly above, its wings outstretched in a graceful glide. There is no sense of foreboding, only peace. If he rests anywhere, it is not in isolation, but as part of the land itself. The rain falls above. The snow drifts quietly. Spring renews the fields, and the world continues as it always has. The funeral procession historical records give us fragmented glimpses of what may have happened after his death. There was no public display, no grand ceremony for the world to see. Instead, a private escort, loyal companions, soldiers, and attendants began a solemn journey homeward. The procession likely moved in silence, the hooves of the horses striking softly against the earth, the banners fluttering gently in the breeze. They would have traveled across distant plains and over quiet hills, beneath that same endless blue sky that had watched him since childhood. The people who accompanied him were entrusted with a sacred duty, to ensure that his burial remained unknown. So secretive was the mission that even those who served in it may have disappeared into the fold of legend, remembered only through whisper and echo. In time, those echoes reached far-off lands, carried in chronicles and travelers' tales. Some say forests were planted across the site to hide it forever. Others claim rivers were redirected. But these may be embellishments, woven by time and imagination. The truth drifts somewhere in between. A culture without monuments in many parts of the world, rulers built in stone so that their memory could endure. Grand mausoleums, intricate tombs, monuments rising toward the heavens, but the Mongols viewed the world differently. To them, permanence did not require architecture. Legacy did not require marble. Their empire spread across continents, shaping the Silk Road, connecting cultures, influencing languages, trade, and diplomacy. That living legacy was memory enough. Their leaders did not need tombs that defied the centuries. Instead, they chose the freedom of the open land, the quiet of the steppe. It was not erasure, it was humility, a respect for the natural order. The search begins centuries later. As centuries passed, curiosity bloomed. Scholars, explorers, and historians began to trace the old stories not out of greed or conquest, but out of longing to understand the past. Where did the great Khan rest? What rituals surrounded his final moments? What truth lay beneath layers of tradition and legend? Yet the search faced two great challenges. First, geography. Mongolia is vast, endlessly vast. Rolling plains stretch beyond the horizon. Hills rise gently, fold into valleys, and stretch outward again. Even with modern tools, the land offers few clues. Everything blends into the natural rhythm of the terrain, unchanged, unmarked. Second, respect. For many Mongolians, the tomb, wherever it may be, is sacred, not to be disturbed, not to be unearthed for curiosity or display. And so the search has always been balanced gently between historical interest and cultural reverence. It is a reminder that some mysteries do not exist only to be solved, but to be contemplated. A landscape of memory today, travelers who pass near Burkhan Khaldun sometimes pause to take in the view. The morning mist lingers along the slopes. The grass sways gently like the surface of a quiet sea. Birdsong rises with the first light of dawn. There is no monument to point the way, no sign etched in stone, yet many feel something there, not a supernatural presence, but a sense of deep time, a feeling that the land remembers, and in truth, land often does. It carries the footprints of those who walked before, hoofprints now long dissolved by wind, stories whispered from one generation to the next. They are not loud, but they endure. A gentle pause in the story, so, as we rest here for a moment beside the quiet fire, beneath the wide Mongolian sky, we reflect not on conquest or war, but on the human story beneath it. A child who became a leader who became a legend who returned to the land that shaped him. The flames flicker softly. The air cools as night deepens. The scent of grass and distant rain lingers gently in the breeze, and the mystery remains untroubled, unrushed, enduring like the steppe itself. And thus the mystery rested once more beneath the quiet passage of time. The fire glows quietly, not bright, not dim, but steady like a memory that never fades. Beyond the fire's soft halo, the open land stretches into darkness. The grasses sway with the slow rhythm of the night breeze. The stars look down, patient and timeless, as though they have watched this story unfold 1,000 times before. And so the journey continues. The empire of paths. During the life of Genghis Khan, the world began to feel smaller, not because the land changed, but because connections grew. Under his rule and under the rule of his descendants, the ancient trade network known as the Silk Road entered a new era. This was not a single road, but a vast web of paths stretching across deserts, mountains, forests, and plains. From the markets of China to the cities of the Middle East, from the steppes of Mongolia to the shores of the Mediterranean, merchants, scholars, monks, and travelers journeyed along routes older than memory. Caravans moved like slow, patient rivers of life across the earth. Silk rustled softly within bundles. Spices breathed their rich, fragrant warmth into the air. Books, ideas, languages, and beliefs flowed from one land to another, and through it all. The influence of the Mongol Empire created a strange, delicate balance, one that allowed the Silk Road to flourish in a way rarely seen before. This time of stability is sometimes remembered as the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace. It was not perfect. It was not without hardship, but it allowed movement. It allowed exchange. It allowed the world to breathe as one, if only briefly. And at the center of this vast world of flowing roads lay a quiet homeland, the steppe. A leader's legacy, though Genghis Khan had passed from the world of the living, his presence lingered in the shape of the empire itself. His sons and grandsons ruled different regions. Cities grew, trade expanded. Cultures intertwined and influenced one another in subtle, lasting ways. Paper making spread more widely. Gunpowder knowledge traveled west. Diplomacy took on new forms. Maps changed, filled with new names, new routes, new horizons. But even as the world shifted and reshaped itself, one constant remained. No one knew where the great Khan had been laid to rest. His tomb did not become a pilgrimage site. It did not draw crowds of mourners or visitors. It did not rise in stone. Instead, it remained, if it exists at all, hidden beneath ordinary earth, somewhere in the homeland he cherished. And in that silence, there is a certain poetry. Travelers and chroniclers along the Silk Road, many travelers heard tales of the Mongols, stories whispered in caravanserai courtyards, murmured beneath the shade of desert tents, or shared over bowls of tea in distant inns. Some chroniclers wrote of the empire with awe, others wrote with fear, but nearly all commented on the discipline, organization, and surprising tolerance that existed within the Mongol administration. Religions were often allowed to coexist. Scholars were protected. Merchants could travel with less fear of bandits. Yet when it came to the death of Genghis Khan, the stories grew softer, more uncertain, as though history itself lowered its voice. Some said he was buried with treasures. Others insisted he took nothing with him. Some believed his resting place was sacred, restricted from entry by decree for generations afterward. But none could say for certain. The truth dissolved into time like footprints erased by the wind. The whisper of the steppe imagined, for a moment, a rider traveling alone across the vast grasslands centuries ago. He follows the sun by day and the stars by night. His horse moves in an easy rhythm. The horizon stretches endlessly forward. To him, as to countless others, the land is not merely geography. It is memory. Somewhere out there, beneath the open sky, lies the unmarked grave of the man who shaped the world he rides through. Yet the land does not reveal its secrets. It simply continues, calm, unbroken, eternal. The wind carries no clues. The rivers do not speak. The mountains watch in silence. And perhaps that silence was the greatest protection of all. The Golden Horde and beyond, as the Mongol Empire expanded westward, new khanates emerged. In Russia and Eastern Europe, there was the Golden Horde. In Persia, the Ilkhanate. In Central Asia, the Chagatai Khanate. And in China, the Yuan dynasty, founded by Kublai Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson. Each realm evolved in its own way, shaped by local customs, climates, and histories. Yet all traced their origin back to the figure born on the steppe, the rider who united the tribes and changed the course of the world. It is striking to think that so vast a legacy could emerge from so modest a burial, from a tomb that may be nothing more than a gentle mound beneath anonymous grass. In a way, it reflects the philosophy of the land itself. Grandeur can be quiet. Power can walk softly. Legacy does not always require monuments. Respect for the unknown modern scholars often ask, should the tomb ever be found? It is a question without a simple answer. On one hand, discovery might illuminate history in remarkable ways. Artifacts, cultural insights, and historical truths could emerge from the earth, offering clarity to questions long debated. On the other hand, there is deep reverence, a belief that disturbing the resting place of such a figure would defy tradition, spirituality, and respect. Many Mongolians feel that the tomb is not meant to be uncovered, that it belongs not to museums or academic study, but to the land itself. In that belief, there is a profound gentleness, a willingness to allow mystery to exist, untouched. The quiet guardians of the past through the centuries, nomadic herders continued their simple, enduring lives across the steppe. They tended their animals, they followed the seasons, they honored the land, and whether they knew it or not, they may have passed close, perhaps very close, to the hidden resting place of the man who once ruled their ancestors. But the land gives nothing away. Summer passes into autumn, autumn into winter, winter into the fresh beginnings of spring. Snow melts, nourishing the soil. Wildflowers bloom in soft colors, pink, yellow, violet. The wind plays its eternal song across the grass. The steppe remains unchanged, a living, breathing monument far grander than anything carved from stone. A calm reflection as we sit beside the fire listening to this story unfold. It is easy to imagine the past not as distant history, but as a quiet companion. We do not need to seek drama or fear within it. There is enough wonder in the simple fact that people once walked, dreamed, struggled, and hoped beneath the same sky we see today. Genghis Khan was not only a conqueror, he was a leader shaped by hardship, belief, ambition, and fate. His life changed the course of continents, and yet in death he chose simplicity. No throne of stone, no golden tomb, only the embrace of the earth. The fire softens, the flames grow lower now, glowing softly like distant lanterns in the dark. The night is deep and calm. Somewhere in the imagined vastness of the steppe, wolves may be singing to the moon, not in menace, but as part of the natural rhythm of life. The stars shimmer gently overhead. The wind carries the scent of dry grass and distant rain. Our story drifts quietly like smoke rising into the dark. And with this gentle thought we pause, thus the mystery rested once more beneath the quiet passage of time. The night remains calm. The fire crackles gently, never rushing, never startling, just a slow whisper of warmth against the cool breath of the open land. Beyond the firelight, the steppe stretches outward like an endless sea of darkened grass, swaying softly under the pale light of distant stars. In this quiet world, the past continues to unfold. The world redrawn long after the life of Genghis Khan came to an end. The ripples of his actions continued to spread outward, reshaping lands that lay far beyond the Mongolian plains. Armies had once thundered across mountains and deserts, but now the movement of ideas, goods, and knowledge flowed gently along the same paths. Maps, once sparse and uncertain, began to grow in detail. Travelers returned from journeys with stories that cartographers carefully translated into ink and parchment. The world that had once seemed immeasurable slowly took on form and shape. But just as the empire revealed the world, it concealed one thing completely: the final resting place of the man who had brought so much of that world together. Not one mapmaker marked it. Not one explorer recorded a clue. His tomb remained absent, a deliberate silence preserved within centuries of documentation. It was as though the land itself had erased the trail. The keepers of secrecy legends say that those entrusted with returning Genghis Khan to his homeland were chosen carefully, not only for their loyalty, but for their ability to keep silence. Perhaps they were lifelong companions. Perhaps they were warriors who had followed him since youth. They traveled with quiet purpose, guided more by devotion than duty. Some tales whisper that when the burial was complete, the land was restored, every stone replaced, every blade of grass returned to its place, leaving no sign that a grave had ever existed. There are even stories, softened by the distance of time, that those who knew the exact location vowed never to reveal it, passing from the world with the secret still held gently within their hearts. Whether these tales are literal truth or not hardly matters. What matters is the care, the reverence, the intention. A decision was made to let the great Khan rest without disturbance, to allow the land rather than stone walls or carved pillars to protect his memory. The oath of the land imagined the place itself, a gentle slope, a small valley perhaps sheltered by distant mountains, grass drifting in slow waves whispering softly beneath the wandering wind. No temple rises from the earth, no monument cuts into the horizon, only silence, only sky, only the steady turning of the seasons. Spring paints the hills in soft green. Summer warms the earth beneath the hooves of grazing horses. Autumn scatters golden leaves like quiet prayers across the ground. Winter lays its white blanket and smooths the landscape into gentle simplicity. And beneath it all, the earth holds its secret. There is something deeply peaceful in this idea. That legacy need not be enshrined in marble or guarded by towering gates. Instead, it may rest beneath an open sky, watched over by mountains and wind. The land itself becomes the tomb. The world takes notice as news of the Mongol Empire reached distant continents. Scholars and rulers in far-off lands began to write about the mysterious ruler from the steppe. His name, once known only among nomadic tribes, spread across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Chroniclers penned accounts filled with admiration and sometimes fear. Monarchs studied his strategies. Merchants thanked his governance for safer trade routes. Diplomats traced treaties and alliances across the empire's vast expanse. Yet even with all of this attention, the mystery of his burial remained untouched. Foreign travelers could learn about the empire. They could study its systems, chronicles, and decrees. But the location of the tomb remained hidden like a quiet star behind clouds. The Mongolian people, whether consciously or simply through time's quiet erosion, kept the silence, and the world respected it. The spirit of nomads. To understand why the tomb might remain hidden forever, one must understand the nomadic heart. For the Mongols, life was never fixed in stone. Homes were made to move. Paths changed with the seasons. The sky was ceiling. The land was floor. Their world was open, shifting, and alive. They did not need towering monuments to remember greatness. They carried memory within stories, songs, traditions whispered around fires such as this one. A name could live as powerfully in oral history as any inscription carved in rock. And so, even if the exact place where Genghis Khan rests has faded from memory, his legacy remains woven into the land itself, into the culture, the language, the reverence for sky and earth. The mystery is not a loss, it is a continuation. Explorers of a later age, many centuries later, during the age of global exploration and scientific curiosity, foreign scholars began to wonder whether the tomb might ever be found. Expeditions were proposed, studies were planned, archives were searched. Some imagined vast underground chambers, others pictured a simple grave with no ornamentation. Theories multiplied like stars in the night sky, but the land remained unchanged, unmapped in that one sacred regard. Even with modern tools, satellites, surveys, scanning technologies, the steppe holds its silence. The sheer vastness of Mongolia makes any singular search feel like searching the ocean grain by grain. And then there is the deeper question, should such a search be undertaken at all? For many, the answer remains gentle and firm. Some mysteries belong to the earth. The mountains remember in Mongolian belief. The mountains stand as ancient guardians, older than nations, older than memory. Burkhan Khaldun, in particular, remains a sacred site honored to this day. Travelers who climb its slopes do not do so lightly. They pause, they reflect. They tie cloth streamers called kadag upon sacred sites as offerings to the spirits. From the mountain's peak, the world spreads outward in wide, rolling waves of land. The sky feels closer. The air is quiet. There is a sense of being watched over by time itself. And somewhere within this vastness, perhaps near, perhaps far, the tomb may lie unmarked and untouched. But the mountains remember, not in words, not in stories, but in their silent presence. A pause beneath the sky as our fire burns softly, sending small sparks drifting upward into the night. We are reminded that history is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it rests beneath landscapes that seem ordinary at first glance. And sometimes the greatest mystery is not meant to be solved. It is meant to be felt. The grass sways gently. The night wind hums. The past lingers like a soft echo beneath the stars. And so the mystery rested once more beneath the quiet passage of time. The excavation site fell silent after the discovery. No one said it aloud, but every worker felt it as if the earth itself was listening. Buried beneath the collapsed chamber lay a slab of smooth black stone, colder than the air around it, absorbing the lantern light instead of reflecting it. The markings carved along its edge were unlike any language known to history. They flowed like vines or veins, and when the archaeologist touched it, she swore she felt something pulse, a heartbeat. They dismissed it as imagination at first, until the stone began to hum, not loudly, not violently. Just a faint vibration, like a distant chant rising from deep beneath the earth. Tools rattled, dust shifted, and then a thin crack spread across the stone, not outward but inward, as though it were opening rather than breaking. Inside was a hollow, and within the hollow, a small object wrapped in brittle cloth untouched by time. They unwrapped it slowly, revealing a relic shaped like a human eye, not carved, not sculpted, organic, too real. It had no moisture, no decay, yet it seemed impossibly alive, its surface swirling with faint silver patterns like constellations trapped beneath glass. The translator whispered the name written on the chamber wall, the Watcher. According to the unseen text that lined the chamber, this Watcher did not belong to the dead king entombed there. It was older, gifted to him by beings who came from beyond the sky, promising knowledge and power in exchange for something left deliberately unclear. The king accepted, and from that moment history began to twist. Wars broke out without reason, rivers changed course, cities disappeared from records, even the calendars shifted. The text implied that the Watcher did not merely observe history, it edited it, reality itself rewritten. And whenever the world strayed too far from its chosen path, the eye opened. The archaeologist laughed nervously. "Myth," she said, but the relic pulsed again once, as though it had heard. And that night, every clock in the nearby town stopped at the exact same second. The same second the slab cracked open. The same second the eye was exposed to the world again. No one slept well, and far away, miles from the dig site, one child woke up screaming, claiming they saw a giant eye in the sky, watching, waiting, because something ancient had been disturbed, and it remembered humanity. The morning began like any other, except it didn't. The sun rose, but the shadows didn't quite match the objects that cast them. Footprints appeared in the sand where no one had walked, and when the team gathered for breakfast, one seat at the table remained strangely unclaimed. A chair, a plate, a cup, all set out, for someone no one remembered setting it for. The archaeologist frowned. "Who's this for?" Silence. Then a worker spoke, confused. "Wasn't that where Daniel usually sits?" Everyone stared at him. "Daniel who?" But he insisted. A tall assistant, dark hair, quiet voice, always took tea, never coffee. Except there was no Daniel on the records, no contract, no passport, no photos, nothing. Yet half the team suddenly remembered him clearly. The other half remembered nothing at all. And when they checked the security cameras, there he was, blurry, framed at the edge, never looking at the lens, until the night the relic was found. In the last clip, at the exact second the slab cracked open, he vanished. Mid-step. Not walked away, not out of frame, just gone, as if the universe deleted him. The archaeologist's hands shook. She turned toward the relic, sealed now in a reinforced containment crate, guarded, monitored. But the instruments surrounding it were useless. Compasses spun, screens flickered, batteries drained instantly. And inside the crate, a faint tapping sound, like someone knocking from within. They decided to move it anyway, to transport it to a secure urban facility. More experts, more safety. More distance from whatever this place had become, but the translator refused to leave. "The texts warned of this," he whispered. "The Watcher corrects deviations. History must fit the path it chooses." "And Daniel?" the archaeologist asked. "He was a deviation." A tremor rippled through the ground. The air went cold. Then every radio, every device, every machine in camp spoke in the same distorted voice, layers of tones overlapping, not human, not comprehensible. Except for one phrase that cut perfectly through, "Correction in progress." The sky flickered, not lightning, not weather, reality blinked. And suddenly the horizon had changed, mountains where there had never been any, roads where desert should have stretched for miles. Half the team gasped, insisting this isn't right. The other half insisted it had always been this way, because the Watcher wasn't just observing anymore. It was editing, and humanity wasn't the author, it was the draft. The convoy rolled out before dawn, 3 trucks, 1 armored carrier, and a silence that felt heavier than the desert heat. The relic was locked inside a shock-sealed containment case surrounded by lead and prayer. The archaeologist sat in the middle vehicle, staring out the window, trying to memorize the landscape, just in case it changed again. Because it would, they all knew it. At first, the journey seemed normal. Dust, long, empty road, the hum of engines. Then the radios crackled, not static. Whispers. Like 1,000 voices layered into one endless echo, speaking in languages older than maps. None of it made sense until a single word surfaced. Continue. The lead driver tightened his grip on the wheel. There's no road on the GPS, he said quietly. The navigator swallowed. There was yesterday. Ahead, the asphalt split into 3 branching highways, each newly paved, flawless, stretching into the horizon. The problem was none of them existed on any map. Which one do we take? Someone asked. The translator didn't hesitate. We don't choose, he said. It already has. And as if the universe itself agreed, one path began to glow faintly like moonlight trapped beneath the tar, so they followed it. The further they drove, the stranger things became. Towns appeared along the roadside, silent places filled with houses that looked lived in but empty. Curtains moved without wind. Streetlights flickered in daylight. A playground swing creaked slowly back and forth. But there were no people, no animals, no sound, like a world paused mid-breath. Has anyone ever been here before? The archaeologist whispered. The driver didn't answer, because suddenly he remembered living here as a child. He remembered birthday parties, school, first love, but none of it was real. No birth certificate, no records, no parents, no proof, just memories, inserted, edited. He slammed the brakes. The convoy stopped. His hands trembled. This place didn't exist yesterday, but I remember everything. And behind them, the road was gone, not broken, not erased, just never there. The translator spoke softly as if explaining a tragedy to a child. The Watcher is guiding us to the anchor point, the place where history first bent, the first agreement, the first trade. The archaeologist's voice cracked. What did humanity trade? The translator closed his eyes. Freedom. The air vibrated. The sky dimmed, though the sun still shone. And every window, every reflective surface began to show not the world around them, but an eye, perfect, endless, patient, watching. The radio spoke again, calmly this time, almost kind. Arrival soon. And the road reappeared ahead, stretching toward a valley that none of them recognized, but somehow every one of them remembered. They descended slowly into the valley, engines humming like distant bees, while the mountains curled gently around them like folded hands. The air there did not feel like air at all. It felt older, heavier, as though it had been waiting for centuries without moving, without stirring, simply holding its breath. No wind, no birds, no trace of passing life, only stillness. At the valley's center, the land dipped into a shallow basin where stone met earth in shapes too precise to be natural and too worn to be modern. Curved terraces spiraled downward, as if the ground itself had been carved into a great stone whirlpool. Grass grew between the cracks, but it was pale and brittle like memory fading at the edges. The convoy halted near the rim. No one spoke at first. Words felt clumsy here like footsteps on sacred ground. The archaeologist stepped out slowly. The basin below shimmered faintly. Not with light, but with an echo, a sensation the mind registered before the eyes could name. At the center stood a structure half buried beneath the soil. A ring of stone pillars arranged in a perfect circle, each etched with symbols too smooth to be carved and too exact to have been guessed. They looked like language, but also like mathematics and also like prayer. The translator's voice emerged quietly as if he feared disturbing the dust. "This is it, the anchor," the archaeologist swallowed. "Anchor of what?" He took a slow breath. "Of history." They walked down together, boots tapping against stone that felt faintly warm. The closer they came, the more they sensed an invisible order at work. Their footsteps seemed guided, their thoughts gently aligned. Even the rhythm of their hearts began to match the silence. At the circle's edge, the relic case hummed faintly as though it recognized home. The archaeologist knelt beside one of the pillars. On its surface, the symbols curved like flowing water. When she traced a line with her fingertip, it felt impossibly smooth, polished not by hands, but by time itself. "These markings, they don't age," she whispered. "No," the translator replied softly, "because time does not pass here. It is stored, collected, measured." She looked up slowly. "Measured for what?" He gestured gently toward the center, where a shallow stone platform lay like the surface of a still pond. "For agreement." They placed the relic upon the platform. Immediately, the air shifted. Not violently, not alarmingly, just gently, like a curtain being drawn aside. The sky dimmed not to darkness, but to twilight. And in that soft blue hush, shapes appeared in the atmosphere, outlines of cities, mountains, ships, and faces from ages long gone, not ghosts, not visions, memories. The past whispered around them like distant waves, empires forming, maps being drawn and redrawn, roads stitched across continents, oceans charted, then forgotten, then charted again, humanity learning. Wandering, striving, and always in quiet places like this, agreements being made, not bargains of fear, but of longing. "For knowledge," the translator murmured. "For certainty, for the comfort of knowing what tomorrow will bring." The archaeologist watched the images flow like water around them. "So we traded unpredictability," he nodded slowly. "In return for order, in return for a world that could be measured, mapped, recorded, remembered." She thought about lost tribes who vanished without record, cities swallowed by jungle, voyages that disappeared beyond the horizon. "Not everything is remembered." His gaze softened. "No, because unpredictability cannot be erased entirely. It is the price of existence. But here at the anchor, the turbulent waters of chance were calmed not by control, but by observation." The word lingered gently in the silence. Observation. The platform pulsed faintly. A feeling drifted into their thoughts, not a voice, not command, just awareness. The watcher was not angry, not hungry, not cruel. It was simply present, a patient custodian of stories. The archaeologist knelt not out of fear, but respect. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. The translator looked toward the horizon, where twilight touched the mountains in soft blue. "Now it asks whether humanity still wishes for its guidance. Whether we still wish the seas to be charted, the stars to be named, the world to unfold in ways we can study and tell. And if we refuse?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he laid a hand gently upon the stone surface. Images slowed, moments lengthened. A ship set sail, and time paused at the crest of a wave. A city burned, then froze between breaths. A child took a first step, hovering gently above the floor. "Without observation," he said softly, "events would still happen. But they would no longer knit themselves into a single woven story. Each life would drift alone. Each moment would shine, then vanish, leaving no echo behind. She felt the quiet weight of his words. History would continue, but memory would not. No chronicles, no maps, no patterns through which the future could be gently guided. Only a quiet scattering of unremembered moments. The archaeologist closed her eyes. She thought of libraries, of travelers and teachers, of quiet nights spent beneath old lamplight reading pages lined with time, of stories passed gently from one generation to the next. She opened her eyes again, calm, resolute. "We are not ready to lose our story." The translator nodded. "I know." They placed their hands together upon the platform. The anchor pulsed once more like a single, slow heartbeat. There was no flash, no tremor, no grand display, just peace. The twilight sky softened back into morning. The mountains stood in quiet grace. The wind returned, faint, warm, kind. The strange towns along the forgotten road would fade once more into the quiet margins of maps. And the watcher, it did what it had always done. It observed, not to rule, not to punish, but to remember. The archaeologist stood slowly, letting the desert air fill her lungs. "And so," she whispered, "the world continues as it always has." The translator finished gently, gently guided by the unseen threads of memory. They turned back toward the convoy, not victorious, not defeated, simply humbled by the vastness of the story they belonged to. Above them, the sky watched, not as a judge, but as a witness. Quiet, patient, kind. And so, as the echoes of the ancient world softened into the night, the journey flowed onward into whatever the next chapter might bring. Morning unfolded slowly across the valley, as though the light itself wished to tread gently upon the ancient ground. The mountains wore a soft, golden haze. The air felt lighter now, not empty, but relieved, like a weary traveler finally allowed to rest. The team began their quiet preparations to leave. No celebration, no speeches, just a calm acceptance that something immense had taken place, something that could not be captured by photographs or academic reports, only remembered. The archaeologist stood at the rim of the basin one last time. From here, the anchor no longer felt like a monument. It felt like part of the earth, as natural as a river, as inevitable as the horizon. The translator joined her in silence. They did not speak for a while. There was no need to. The moment simply existed, suspended gently between past and future. At last, she said softly, "Do you think others will ever find this place again?" He smiled faintly. "Only when they are ready to ask the same question we asked." "And what question was that?" she whispered. He looked toward the still circle of stone. "Whether we wish to remember." The wind carried that thought away, letting it drift into the open sky like a small, fragile seed. They began their ascent toward the vehicles, each footstep slow and deliberate. With every step, the world felt slightly more familiar, as though the fabric of time was knitting itself back into everyday rhythm. Engines started, dust lifted, and the convoy rolled gently out of the valley, leaving the anchor in its quiet sanctuary beneath the passage of clouds. The world between roads, the strange triple road that had greeted them before, did not return. There was only one road now, cracked in places, weathered, real, the kind of road that had been shaped by years of traffic and storms, not by unseen design, the kind of road that belonged simply to the world. Yet something subtle had changed. The silence inside each traveler felt different now, not empty, but filled with calm reflections like still water holding the sky. Occasionally, the archaeologist glanced into the side mirror, not to search for eyes, not to see whether they were still being watched, but simply to observe the landscape gently slipping behind them, each passing hill and scattered stone becoming part of the soft, unbroken thread of memory. The radios were quiet again, only faint static, only the hum of the engine and the whisper of tires against warm asphalt. It was enough. Returned to the known world, they reached the nearest town near sunset, the real kind of town, with worn sidewalks and softly flickering lights, and people moving slowly through the evening air with groceries, bicycles, and small conversations. Life, ordinary, beautiful, unrecorded except by those who lived it. As they parked, the archaeologist watched children playing by the roadside. A kite floated lazily overhead. Somewhere a pot simmered. Somewhere else, quiet music drifted from an open window. For the first time in weeks, she felt grounded, not trapped, not overwhelmed, just present. The relic remained sealed, resting silently in its protective case, calm, inert, its role fulfilled. Not a weapon, not a treasure. Simply a key that had opened a door to understanding and then quietly stepped aside. They checked into a small guest house, the kind with creaking floors and curtains faded by long sunlight. The archaeologist sat by the window that evening, notebook open, pen resting between thoughtful hands. Not to document, not to analyze, but to reflect. She wrote slowly as though the words themselves needed space to breathe. History is not only what happened, it is the gentle record of eyes that saw, ears that listened, and hearts that remembered. The translator passed by the doorway and paused. "Writing?" She nodded, smiling softly. "Not a report, just a thank you." He inclined his head. "That may be the most important record of all." Ripples through time word of the expedition would eventually reach academic circles. Conferences, quiet debates, footnotes in journals. There would be skepticism, as there always is. There would be theories, tidy ones, imaginative ones, improbable ones. But the deepest truth would remain where it belonged, in silence, because the anchor was never meant to prove anything. It was meant to remind humanity that its story is fragile and precious. That every recorded word, every carved tablet, every inked page, every photograph, every song, every map is part of a great, gentle act of witnessing. And that behind it all there is a quiet companionship, the watcher, not a master, not a deity, not a judge, simply a presence that keeps the pages from scattering in the wind. The archaeologist's dream that night, she slept deeply for the first time in many months. In her dream, she walked across endless grasslands beneath a wide, blue sky. The land rolled like waves upon the earth. In the distance, riders moved across the horizon, silhouettes on horseback, swift yet weightless, their banners fluttering softly, not threatening, not haunting, just passing through time. As they rode, their tracks appeared, then slowly faded, then reappeared again, not erased, not permanent, simply balanced between memory and forgetting. One rider slowed and turned his head, though she could not see his face. He gave a single nod, as though acknowledging her presence across centuries. Then the wind carried them onward, dissolving gently into the past. She awoke with peace in her chest, the kind of peace that does not demand understanding, only acceptance. Closing the day, evening settled softly over the town. Lights flickered on one by one like stars preparing for night. The archaeologist stepped outside for a walk. The translator joined her, and together they moved quietly along the narrow street, not speaking much, listening to the low murmur of distant voices, the slow rhythm of footsteps, the quiet heartbeat of a world that simply lives. The mystery no longer felt like a problem to solve. It felt like a companion, a reminder that the world is larger than certainty, yet gentle enough to hold us within it. And so, as the echoes of the ancient world softened into the night, their journey turned peacefully toward its final chapter, waiting calmly beyond the horizon. Night settled over the town like a soft, dark blanket. Lanterns glowed faintly in windows, casting warm squares of light across quiet streets. Somewhere, the soft strum of a lute drifted through the air. Somewhere else, water trickled along a canal, catching moonlight in tiny silver ribbons. Life carried on ordinary, unnoticed, yet immeasurably beautiful. The archaeologist walked slowly, letting the air brush her cheeks, feeling the gentle rhythm of existence around her. The translator followed at a respectful distance, silent, observing the soft pulse of human life that continued undisturbed, unaware of the mysteries they had just brushed against, and yet somehow touched by them. The weight of memory, the relic, remained in its containment, guarded, silent, a custodian of stories beyond human comprehension. Its presence was no longer urgent. It had fulfilled its purpose, and in that fulfillment it had taught something profound. History is not simply what is written, what is counted, or what is recorded. It is what is remembered by people, by the land, and by the quiet, unseen threads that weave time together. Every ripple of wind across the steppe, every river bending gently through a valley, every mountain watching over its people, these are as much a part of the story as the empires and kings themselves. The archaeologist realized this fully now, that the greatest mysteries are not solved, they are felt. They are carried in quiet understanding, in gentle observation, and in the patient attention given to what persists across generations. A moment of reflection, she climbed a small hill overlooking the town, where the rooftops were softened by distance and darkness. The streets were still. The air smelled faintly of grass and wood smoke. A single owl called somewhere far off, its voice rich and calm. She closed her eyes. For a long moment, she imagined the vast steppes of Mongolia, the sacred mountains, the hidden valley, the anchor beneath the earth. She thought of the Watcher not as something terrifying, but as a companion, a witness to the beauty and fragility of humanity. And in that quiet reflection, she understood that some mysteries are meant to remain untouched, not to frustrate, nor to hide knowledge, but to remind us that life is bigger than what we can measure. That the past is alive, not just in books or museums, but in the very air, the soil, the rivers, and the wind that touches every traveler along the way. The path forward, the team gathered quietly for their last meal together. No speeches were made. No cameras recorded the moment. Only soft conversation, laughter that rose like smoke into the night, and the subtle gratitude for having been part of something beyond themselves. They spoke of ordinary things, food, music, the coming seasons. Yet beneath it all ran a current of reverence for the land, for the history they had witnessed, and for the patient, gentle guidance of the unseen forces that had protected the secret of Genghis Khan's tomb. When the archaeologist stepped outside afterward, she saw the stars shining clearly over the town. She thought of distant Mongolia and the mountains standing silent. She felt the weight of time, yes, but not as burden, rather as comfort. A reminder that the world carries its stories in a rhythm older and deeper than any human plan. A quiet farewell before turning in for the night, she whispered softly to the air, "Thank you for letting me see, even if only for a moment, the pulse beneath the stones." The wind stirred. A single leaf drifted across the street. Somewhere unnoticed, life continued its endless, gentle rhythm. And she understood, some stories are not ours to possess. They are ours to witness, to respect, and to carry quietly in memory. The watcher would continue its watch. The anchor remained. The steppe and mountains and rivers held their secrets, and humanity would continue to live, to grow, and to remember, sometimes clearly, sometimes in fragments, the soft echoes of the past. The peaceful end she lay down to sleep that night with a calm heart. Outside, the town breathed slowly. Stars gleamed softly in the heavens. The air was cool, fragrant, and steady. And for the first time in a long while, the world felt complete. A complete story, not fully told, not fully revealed, but perfectly held within the balance of observation, memory, and time itself. And so, as the echoes of the ancient world softened into the night, the journey came to rest. The mystery endured, and the world quietly whispered its eternal song.